What's up, my business builders and legacy lovers? Welcome back to the Do.Different.Better Show, where we turn game changing ideas into everyday money moves. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, CEO of Social Impact Now and founder of Connect Up Institute and managing director of the Integrated Capital Fund. And today we're diving into something that might just flip your entire mindset on about entrepreneurship, and that is entrepreneurship through acquisition, or ETA. Now, you might be thinking, wait, I don't have to start a business from scratch to be an entrepreneur. Not necessarily. In fact, starting from zero isn't always the smartest move. There's a whole other route that's far less risky, already cash flowing, and built for sustainability, especially if you're a first time founder or business owner. Today's show is a must listen if you've ever thought about running your own business but don't want all the drama, have the time, the interest, or quite frankly, the patience for launching something from nothing. Here's what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about what is ETA and what it isn't. We're going to talk about why buying a business could be the smartest move that you could make. We're also going to talk about the pros and cons. And you know, I'm always going to give you the real talk and where and how you can get started. So, this show is really super personal for me because I'm literally on this journey right now. So, I thought I would share my opportunity and what's happening with my journey into ETA, and you get to grow your wealth alongside it with me. So, first, let's break down what is entrepreneurship through acquisition. Entrepreneurship through acquisition is a strategy where individuals become business owners by buying an existing business rather than starting one from the ground up. Instead of bootstrapping a new idea, you get to buy something that you know already works. The brand, the customers, the employees, the systems, everything's all in place. That doesn't mean that it can't be improved, but everything's kind of already set in motion. And there's a formula that works. And there are several ways to do this. One, there is search funds where you actually raise money from investors to find and buy a business. You can self fund the acquisition where you use your own cash or a combination of loans and personal capital to be able to um, make the acquisition happen or finance the acquisition. Then there's partner led acquisitions where you team up with other buyers or other companies or a collective to buy a company. And finally, there's employee ownership buyouts like ESOPs or worker co ops. You may have heard this is really big on the West Coast and it's really big in Minnesota of worker owner transition co ops and co ops in general. But ETA isn't just a theory, it's a growing movement. Organizations like New Majority Capital are out there actively training leaders like you to buy businesses. And Concerned Capital is supporting employee owned transitions along with Project Equity. All of them are pushing back against the myth that entrepreneurship is only for the privileged few. So, let me be 100% clear about what ETA is and what it isn't. This isn't just some quick flip or multi-level marketing scheme. And it's not going to make you the next Damon John or Rihanna overnight. What ETA it is not buying a job. So I really want you to make the distinction between um, oh, I'm just going to come in and run the company. That's not necessarily the goal and the purpose. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a lot more detail. But you're not buying a job unless that's what you want to do, which I don't think you want to do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to this show. Um, Also, it's not about coasting on someone else's success. There's still going to be work that needs to be put into the business. It's just a very different way of thinking and looking at work and what you're contributing to the business, as opposed to if you were starting a business from scratch where you have to come up with the ideas, you have to come up with the brand, you've got to find the customer, you've got to find the distribution channels, you've got to figure out how to market that. A lot of that goes away or is significantly reduced when you decide to purchase or acquire a business that already exists. The other thing it's not is it's not passive income without responsibility. There is some level of responsibility because what you don't want to happen, it's no different than if you were to buy a rental property or if you were to buy a building. There is some maintenance that must go on that you are responsible for if you're going to purchase a business. So it's not a set it and forget it. Now, it's probably going to be a significantly less amount of work than if you are doing a startup. But once again, we're going to get into all of those details in a little bit, and I'm going to share a little bit about my journey as far as the businesses that I've been thinking about and talking to, and with me and my business partner. But one you want to think about is you're stepping into the driver's seat, not taking the back road. You'll need a vision, you're going to need grit, and you're going to need a strategy to really figure out how you're going to scale this business or be additive to the business. Where are you going to take it to the next level, whatever the next level looks like, right? So now let's talk about maybe an economic case and why this might be a really great path. Baby boomers are retiring at a historical rate at this moment of time. You may have heard me talk about, or you may have heard in the Financial Times, people talking about the silver tsunami. The silver tsunami is we are in this period where the largest segment of the population, which consists of baby boomers, are now leaving careers, professional corporations. They're also leaving their businesses that they may have started 20, 30, 40 years ago. It is estimated that 2.3 million small businesses across the United States are owned by people who are age 55 or older. These businesses generate over 5 trillion, that's trillion with a T, in revenue annually. Yet many of these founders don't have a succession plan. The translation? There are businesses for sale that are profitable, they are stable, they are community-based businesses, and they need buyers. For underestimated entrepreneurs, ETA can be a game changer, especially in rural and third-ring suburb communities. Instead of fighting for capital to start something new or fighting with yourself to start something new, maybe starting from zero is just too overwhelming and you're just not an innate builder. You might best be positioned to walk into something proven. And here's what you'll get when you acquire a business if you make the right choices and the right decision. You get built in cash flow. It's already making money. It's already cash flowing positive. It's already reached its break even point, and hopefully, you've identified a business that surpassed the break even point. You're also inheriting a team and a customer base and maybe even a management team. What's great about that, I don't know about you, HR is the bane of my existence. Hiring people it's an art and a science. I wouldn't say that I've mastered it. I think I've gotten really good at it. And between sort of things that I've done quantitatively as I interview people and then just gut checking and what I've known from all the bad decisions I've made in the past about hiring people, knowing that you have a team that already works together. Ideally, they like each other. They already know the rules of engagement. They already know all the processes because many of them have probably contributed to how it works. The team is already humming. And so you might just need to make a couple of tweaks here and there to even or add more team members to make the team even more efficient, more productive, which leaves you all time to do other things and not feel overworked or underappreciated. The other thing that you get with acquisition is you get to gain added credibility with lenders, vendors, and customers, and possibly investors if you're bringing on investors. And let's talk equity. Many acquisition deals involve seller financing, SBA loans, or creative capital tools, especially when you bring mission and legacy to the table. So, for example, Concern Capital has supported deals where the longtime employees bought the company that they work for. My business partner, I've talked about this on the show. She, after having her business for 20 years, she sold her business to the employees. And while it took a while to negotiate and navigate the deal, it has just been an amazing experience for her. And it's been an amazing experience for people who never thought in the world that they would possibly be owners of a business, particularly their own business that they are working in, and that they are a collective power in decision making as employee owners of that company. On the other hand, there's new majority capital that actually trains folks like you to evaluate businesses, find funding, and close deals. I'm very excited to say that I am actually starting, I will be a fellow in the current beta program, which is their entrepreneurship through acquisition. So I'm going to keep you posted on what's happening, but I'm really super excited. And I'm so excited that they are bringing this program to the Twin Cities. So I encourage you to check them out, but more on that in a little bit. So once again, let's talk about the advantages of acquisition over starting a new venture on your own. One, it's less risky than starting a business from scratch where there's a lot of unknowns. This usually an acquisition was going to be it's a proven concept, it's a proven product or service, it's a proven customer base. The other thing is that it's immediate revenue. You if you play your cards right, you're going to be choosing a business where the revenue is coming in already. You've surpassed that break even mark. The other thing that you want to think about is that the opportunity to add leadership to something that's already successful. I know that's something that was really important to me as when I thought about buying a business. I really wanted to be additive to the business, not necessarily building on a business. I have a certain set of skills. I know what those skills are, and I wanted to buy a business where I could leverage those skills, not necessarily be repetitive to the skills that are already in that particular business. The other thing that it allows you to do, acquisition allows you to do, is to have greater access to capital because, quite frankly, banks like existing businesses because of the proven concept, because of the proven model, and because of the proven staff. The other thing is that it allows the possibility to keep jobs and wealth in your local community. I believe it was Concerned Capital that did a report that talked about the number one way to grow not only the middle class, but communities is through small business and manufacturing, right? So when people live in a place where they make the thing, they make a thing, they want to stay close to their job. So they bring home ownership. Home ownership builds to people pursuing careers and education to be able to advance their wealth, and the cycle continues, and people usually like to stay in community, so that it creates really, really strong mechanisms for local economies, right? But I'm not your BFF if I don't tell you the good with the bad. So here are some of the disadvantages when you think about acquisition. It's not cheap. You will need capital and or collateral and or investor support to close the deal and make it happen, right? Just like buying a home or a used car, you're also going to inherit the business and its problems, right? So if there is leakage as far as like any sorts of things, employee problems, if there's anything related to any fraud, whether that be within the organization with the leadership or with staff, if there's a leaking roof, if there's something going on with the property because real estate comes with it, that also all becomes your problem. So just remember to think about that. Also, another disadvantage could be integration and transition can be really, really tough. People don't like change. We as human beings, we hate change. We don't like change, right? So you're coming in, you may have a different culture, a different philosophy that you want to bring to the business, and staff may be resistant to that. And what happens when staff become resistant to that is where you start to see sabotage, whether it be intentional or unintentional. So these are the things that you have to think about when you think about, is acquisition right for me? Is that the right move for me at this point in time? The other thing that you want to think about is due diligence takes time and expertise. This isn't a walk in the park purchase, like you just walk up and you're like, oh, I'm in love with this business, and you move on. So as we start to close out this segment, let's talk about how do you get started on your ETA journey. The first thing you need to do, and I always tell you this no matter what we're talking about, is to get educated. I definitely encourage you to check out new majority capital programs, as well as see what the opportunities are with an organization like Concern Capital. There are many others out there. Your local small business association, regional office, your small business development agency that is local in your community can also guide you through what are the opportunities, what are the resources that they have locally to walk you through this process, what are the funding opportunities that are available. They should be able to be tapped in and help you with that at the local level. But both of these programs run cohorts and produce case studies on their websites based on real world acquisition. So you're going to be able to really kind of see the good, bad, and the ugly of this whole process to really make sure that it's the right thing for you, at least from the onset. The next thing I want you to do is do your research. Look into local businesses that might not have succession plans. They're probably on your block or very close within 5 mile radius of where you live or work. So definitely go into that organization or go into that business and be like, hey, can you tell me a little bit about the owner? Are they looking to retire? Are they looking to move? Are they looking to make a change in their life? I would be interested in talking with them. I'm literally about to have this conversation with my veterinary, my vet office, who I've been going to for the last 10 years. I know my veterinarian is getting up there in years, and I know he's already told me he's trying to pull back. And so I'm going to be talking to him about what could it look like. Would he be interested as far as selling his business? But there are some small business brokers that you can talk to. There is Sunbelt Advisors. There's also websites like Biz by Sell and also Search Funder. The other thing I want you to do is I want you to connect with financial advisors. If you have one, talk to your financial advisors. You can talk to CPAs. You can also talk to the commercial lender at your local bank. They are going to be really tapped into businesses that are going to be thinking about selling. They're going to know who might be prime because maybe they have a loan that might be sunsetting, or they may have had conversations with people who they think might be good, and they can talk to that person about maybe possibly connecting you. But also, if you have an attorney, if you know an attorney, especially one that works in corporate law or small business law, see, they may have been talking with their clients who might be interested in thinking about that they're sunsetting the business, or they're looking to move to another country, or they're looking to retire because their kids don't want to take over the business. The other thing that you're going to want to do is to prepare your financials. Start by building a capital stack. Know what you can bring to the table. What are your skills? What are the capital? What sweat equity? And what other things that you might think that you'll need to support this acquisition internally, financially, operationally, or otherwise. So, as we start to wrap up, I want you to DM me on socials, and I will send you my ETA readiness checklist from start of identifying what kind of business that you would like to run, all the way into like what are some of the things that you might need to think about, like what do you need to bring to the table, but also really assessing what is your readiness to think about how you want to engage in this conversation. What are the gaps that you might need to fill for your dream acquisition to be a reality? So, as we start to wrap up, I am so excited to talk about this topic. Coming up next, we are going to be diving into how to get investor ready for an acquisition and what due diligence looks like when you're buying a business. So don't go anywhere. This is the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and I can't wait to see you after the break. Welcome back, my visionary venture takers. We're still cruising through the episode of the Do Different Better Show. And now that you understand what entrepreneurship through acquisition is and what it isn't, let's talk about how you can actually make it happen. This is your roadmap to buying into the next big chapter of your wealth creation. Of your wealth creation. So, I want you to ask yourself, what is your zone of genius? Do you love managing people? Are you operations focused? Do you have a specific technological background or a service mindset? This will guide what kind of business fits your personality, your values, and your lifestyle. So, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to start thinking about industries you know or you want to learn about. It could be a service based business, logistics, home healthcare, HVAC, light manufacturing, food services. The list is endless. You would be surprised. These sectors often have good recurring revenue and can be really good targets. As you get to more experience with the process and your capabilities, you can explore looking for businesses outside of your expertise. I have a friend of mine who owns a weapon company, a weapons making manufacturing company. They know absolutely nothing about weapons, but they do have a mission to change the stigma of weapons. So what they've done is they're getting themselves educated, but they're really more looking at it from a philosophical standpoint. So one of the things that it's really, really valuable and important is I know for me, as I'm going through this journey, I've been very clear about I want to acquire business by which I have some expertise in, whether that be technical expertise or I have a very general sense of how that industry works so that I can be additive to the business to be able to make connections, but also understand how to make process improvement to make the business run more efficiently and more effectively. And so I'm really, really clear about what are the things that I can add. I have a background in marketing communications. I have a background in business development. I have an extensive network and I know how to do contracting. So these are some of the things as I think about what could I bring that's additive? So for me, it's really going to be great to find a business that maybe they've been in operation for 20 years and have never done any marketing. Well, I know that I can bring that to the table to be like, if you're doing well without marketing, we can exponentially grow once we start to add in some targeted marketing, very specific campaigns to different audiences, and we can grow our market share or we can grow our geography. So these are the things that you want to think about when you start to analyze what are the skills that you have to bring to the table. But here's like a checklist that you can also use when you're thinking about looking at what kind of business would be ideal for you to acquire. So obviously, we want something that's cash flowing, right? And usually in some of these sites, they'll actually tell you what the cash flow number is. So you can take that number, divide it by 12, and that kind of gives you a very rough idea. And I say rough idea of how much money it's making over its expenses every month, but not necessarily. So it's going to be really important the other steps that I'm going to talk about, which is the due diligence. But on the face of it, you want a business obviously that's cash flowing. You want that cash flowing number to be fairly reasonable. You definitely don't want something that's cash flowing like $100, a year or a month. And normally, when you go to the website, the number that you're going to see is for the year. It's not going to be on a monthly basis. It's going to be the total for the year. That's why I say if you divide it by 12, it kind of gives you an idea of, how are they cash flowing from month to month. The next thing on the checklist is finding an owner that's ready to retire. Maybe they want to be home with their grandchildren or their partner. Maybe they're planning to move to another state that's warmer. We get a lot of that in the upper Midwest. Or maybe they're moving to another country. They're going to live out their dream as a painter. Whatever the case may be, the owner is leaving the business. And so that's really, really ideal as far as rating the business that you might be thinking about acquire. The other thing on the list is that the business has an established customer base. And quite frankly, what would be really great is if that customer base, they can tell you in percentages, like how many of types of customers that they have and what percentage of revenue does each particular customer represent. They may not give that to you until you sign the NDA, the non-disclosure agreement, or the confidentiality agreement, but at some point you will get that information. Also think about that it's located in a place that you're willing to work or relocate in. Now, a lot of people, like I have some friends, they own businesses in other states. I think that's great once you get to a certain level of sophistication with acquiring businesses and managing businesses from a distance. But for somebody where if this might be your first venture, very much like a rental property, and I've said this on the show before, Buy something that you will see on the way that you are doing your normal course of business, right? Whether that's where you grocery shop, where your sphere of influence is, but find something that you can drive by that thing, that asset at any given time with relative ease. I highly, highly encourage that, especially your first time out. Once again, once you've done a few of these and you feel more confident and you have a process and a system by which you can manage an asset that is not in your scope and your immediate sphere of influence, great. But if you're new to this, you do not want to have a business in Peoria, Illinois, and you're in St. Paul, Minnesota, and you don't necessarily have a quick way to get down there if something goes left, right? So once again, just thinking practical and tactical. The other thing on the checklist as far as looking at a business is does the business has systems and staff that you can build upon, right? That's going to be super, super valuable and super, super important as far as, you know, I've seen business where the cash flow was great, but there's 3 employees. Okay, what that tells me is once I take over, you already have some natural attrition that's going to happen. That attrition is exponentially higher when there's a small staff. So if there's you might be cash flowing $200,000 in the business and there's 3 employees, you can imagine at least one of those employees might leave, especially if one of those employees has been the owner's right hand for the last 10, 15, 20 years. They're probably going to leave as well. Not necessarily on purpose. It might be a decision that comes to them later, but there's a really good chance that they are going to leave the business not too long after the owner leaves the business. So now you're down to 2 employees. And what if it's a business you know nothing about? You're going to have to step into action quick to be able to find a replacement. And if you are in a business that is already struggling with finding talent for whatever reason, that's going to be a problem. And now what you thought was going to be a great purchase that was going to create some opportunity for you has now become just a bear on your back, right? And that is not the goal. That is not what we're trying to do here. Okay. So that's all step one. Step two is learn from the ETA ecosystem. Like I said, I can't express this enough. I really want you to get yourself educated. Like I tell you about everything on this show, learn, 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 learn. Do some research. New Majority Capital offers free and paid programs specifically for underrepresented buyers looking to purchase small businesses. I encourage you to check out their business ownership, their beta program. Like I said, they have not paid me to talk about this. I'm just a big fan of theirs from way back. And now I am a fellow in the program. So I'm going to keep you posted and tell you how it's going throughout the program. The other organization is Concerned Capital. Now, they are going to specialize in transitioning businesses to employees through worker buyouts. Their focus is keeping jobs in working class communities, but also building up manufacturing within communities. There's also some books to read. There is Buy Then Build by Walker Diebel. Hopefully, maybe we can get Walker onto the show. But I definitely have sent out an invitation to some folks to come on the show and talk about this even more. So keep an eye out on upcoming episodes. The Harvard Business Review also has a guide on buying small businesses by Richard Rubach and Royce Yudkoff. So those are something that you might want to check out. I don't know if those are free. They might be available for free at Harvard Business Review, but you might be able to find one at the library. So I definitely encourage you, if it's not free, go to your reference librarian at your local library and see if the library has a copy that you can review or that you can borrow digitally, right? So once again, let's protect these libraries. They're amazing resources for free. So definitely I cannot talk enough about leveraging your librarian. They are super, super smart. And if they don't have the answers, they can possibly find the answers. They know who to call to get the answers. The other thing that you can do is attend ETA boot camps. There are lots of universities like Stanford and Harvard that have ETA fellowships, but for the rest of us that might maybe not be in those locales, there are platforms like Aquira and ETA School that offer trainings online. There's possibly even some things on Coursera or Udemy or LinkedIn Academy. So you want to check those out. Once again, your reference librarian might be able to connect you with some workshops that are either live or online in your community. So definitely want to make sure you check those out. Step 3, here's where you search for a business to buy. So here, let's talk about where you can look. So I've talked about Sunbelt Advisors. I've leveraged them in the past. BizBuySell.com. There's also BizQuest.com. There's also Main Street marketplaces as well. So once again, your reference librarian or your local bank, they might have lines of sight on where might be some good places or even some good tips to find some of your local businesses that might be ready for acquisition. There's also local brokers, but use caution. Many of these are really biased towards the seller. So just be mindful. But then there's also just tap into your network. Let people know in your network that you're looking to acquire business. You'd be surprised how many family owned businesses don't have a succession plan. I love the episode on, I think it's Billions, where Bobby Axel, the main character, ends up buying the childhood pizza joint that he's been going to for his entire life. The owner wanted to retire, and Bobby Axel, just couldn't bear the thought that this pizza joint where he's been going to since he was a kid was going to go away. Like, that's the most likelihood that that's going to be a really good deal for everybody, right? That the owner knows that there's going to be somebody who really is going to keep the love and care of that particular business. The person is going to be taking over the business, wanting to maintain that cultural icon within the community, but also maybe able to infuse some capital to make some valuable updates or upgrades, like maybe marketing or anything, or e-commerce or things like that, to be additive to the business. But sometimes it's not necessarily about making more revenue. It's really keeping those cultural icons in our community. And if we can preserve them, that's always a win-win for everybody. So here's some things to watch for as you're looking at some of these businesses. One, you want to make sure that you're looking for some steady revenue for the past 3 to 5 years. Also take into consideration things like the pandemic. I was looking at a beauty salon that my partner and I think I've talked about this on the show. We were thinking about, they had a really good brand, they had a really good model, and we thought that there was a really great opportunity to syndicate the store into multiple stores, but also build it into a brand that could be offering consumer package good or consumer products, maybe like an extension of a beauty brand, whether that be hair care or lines of hair care tools or something like that. But we felt that there was a really solid brand, and we saw a line of sight of how we could actually grow the brand and grow the business by expansion. So the other thing that you want to watch out for is minimal customer concentration. No one client should make up more than 30 to 40% of the sales. You also want to have a solid employee retention. Going back to my example, if you're buying a business and there's 3 employees, they may have been there a long time, but then that also means, like the seller, they may not be planning on staying for very much longer. So just putting together, now that's an assumption, and your assumption might be wrong, but logic stands to reason. If somebody's been with a company for a very long time, the time that they're continuing to stay on is going to be very limited. You also want to think about a business where the owner is not involved in every detail of the business. Remember, the goal is not to buy a job, unless, of course, that is your goal. But I highly, highly discourage that, right? But you want a business, and sometimes on these websites, it'll say absentee owner, or it'll say partially absentee owner. These are going to be really valuable and important so that you can distinguish how much time and energy you need to put into the business. I know for me, I was very clear, like I could not purchase a business that needed me to be there on site every day all the time. I really wanted a business that was going to require less than 5 hours a week from me, because I knew that I had very limited capacity in being able to do anything more than that as it related to the business. I really wanted to work on the growth plan of the business, not necessarily in the business. So now let's talk about funding really quick as we begin to wrap up this segment. So there's SBA 7A loans. This is the holy grail for business acquisitions. You'll need good credit and some business experience and possibly a 10% down payment, and SBA will finance the rest. It's a really smoking deal. But remember, SBA will also have some requirements for the business depending on the industry. So one of the things that I found out as I was looking at this salon business is that in salon business, somebody on has to be available that has a salon management license in our state. That might differ from other states, but in our state, you have to have a salon manager's license to operate a salon, right? So neither myself or my partner didn't have that, even though I have a lot of background in the beauty industry as well as cosmetology. My mom was a cosmetologist, so I grew up in the industry, so I understand it very well. That's not ideal because what I don't want to do is actually have to go to school to get my salon manager's license. However, we were considering working out a deal with the previous owners or the sellers to maybe have one of them stay on as a small percentage equity owner so that we would have the latitude that she would be a licensed owner as part of our partner group. So there are ways to get around these, but you just got to think creatively and legally what's available to you. You can also finance the business through equity partners. A family member, a colleague, or a mission aligned investor could go invest with you. I've talked about this with my partner. There's also seller financing. Many owners are open to financing a portion of the deal, so don't be afraid to ask for terms like 30% seller note with really flexible repayment terms that work for you or your partner or your investor group that you put together. There's also some grants, particularly for underrepresented buyers, particularly in rural communities. There are some CDFIs or local economic development agencies that provide grants or down payment assistance for underrepresented or estimated buyers or marginalized buyers. So there's also the new Majority Capital's Ready, their beta program. They're actually preparing entrepreneurs to become bankable and connects them with mission aligned capital resources. So this final step as we start to slide into home is I want you to do your due diligence like a boss, okay? And so what that means is they're going to provide you with 3 to 5 years of tax returns and profit and loss statements. If you're working with a broker, they're usually going to have these anyway because they're going to require that to work with them as a broker from on the seller side, but you'll want to ask that. They may ask you to sign a confidentiality agreement before giving those to you. You also want to look at long-term customer contracts or large customer contracts. You're going to want to look at lease agreements. You're going to want to know if they're in a building, when's the lease going to be up? When were you going to have to step in and deal with that? You also want to think about key employee compensation and turnover. How many of the employees are at the top end of the pay cycle, or is there opportunity to actually pay them more to stay? You're also going to want to look at the outstanding liabilities or lawsuits, look at good and bad reviews online, and go look at them up on the Better Business Bureau. Also, you're going to want to bring in some experts like an accountant, a lawyer. So you want to have those at the ready so that they can represent you and looking through those financials and contracts to see if they're really set up really well or if there are some red flags that they need to work on. So also get you some industry experts, particularly if you do not have an expertise in that industry. And please don't skip this step. Businesses often look better on paper than what they really are. Due diligence is where you're going to find out the real gold, but also the red flags. So last step, make your transition plan. I want you to work with the seller to negotiate a transition period. Where they stand on, where will they stay on for 3 to 6 months or linger and outline what does it need to look like? Is it weekly meetings? Is it monthly meetings? Are they going to make introductions into the key clients? I once worked with a business acquisition where we thought it was best to not announce that there would be a new owner until 6 to 8 months after the closing. It was a woman buyer buying an electrical company that had an all male staff except for the admin. So we really wanted to instill confidence that the new owner had capabilities to manage the business, but also from the customer side, that there wasn't going to be a lot of upheaval as a result. And so we were able to retain most of the clients because by the time that the clients knew that there was an acquisition had happened and that there'd been a transfer of ownership, they'd already been working with them for a long period of time. So there was nothing to worry about. So that was a lot. So all of this is really going to help out your smoothing out the operations and keeping employees and the customer happy. So as we start to wrap up this segment, I know this was a lot. We've covered what you need to be looking for, how you need to be researching, and what are some of the key points. As we wrap up the last few minutes in the next segment, we're just going to be talking a little bit more about how now to get yourself set up and what are the concrete next steps. So I will see you after this really, really quick break. Hey, my wealth holders. You are back at the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. We are sliding into the finish line and talking about entrepreneurship through acquisition. One of the things that I didn't get to wrap up as I wrapped up the previous segment, I really just wanted to come back to talking about quickly. One of the things that you can the lever that you can pull to actually help retain some of the employees. So this is where, giving them bonuses to maybe after staying on for an extra year. There are things that you can do, maybe providing them with a little bit of equity. There's lots of things that you can do to actually help with keeping staff on. But one of the things that's really super important is that you be transparent, be reassuring. If you want to build trust from day one. I found it best to not necessarily make any big changes to the business for the first 6 months. I think it's really important to just see how the business runs, but also it lets them know that you're putting confidence in them. And then when you do come back and say, okay, it's been 6-9 months, I've been watching things, here are the things that I'm thinking about, or you tell me, what would you fix if this were your business? Or how can we make your life easier? What changes could we make to the business? When you position it from that particular perspective, the employees are far more likely to be engaging and be supportive and be a part of the solution and not part of the problem. So here's my action step that I want that I didn't get to get in from the last one. I was just so excited about the topic. This is your challenge for the week. I want you to write down 3 types of businesses that you would be open to owning. What could it look like? I also want you to visit New Majority Capital and Concern Capital's website, but also your local SBDA, Small Business Development Agency, and see what they have to offer. I want you to start browsing businesses for sale and just to get a sense of what's out there and get in the habit of thinking like an acquisition owner. Once again, you don't need to be a boss from scratch. You can actually shortcut a lot of the pain and anguish by going into something that already exists. So now that we're kind of wrapping up to the finish line, I am here. We've learned about the pros and cons, and we've talked about that. Now it's time to talk about how to get started, what tools to use, and how to avoid some rookie mistakes. So step 1 is decide your path. Do you want to be an individual buyer? Do you want to do a search fund? Do you want to do employee ownership? Or do you want to do this in partnership or with a group? Think about what kind of entrepreneur owner are you going to be? Are you going to be the solo buyer? Are you going to be using a mix of your savings, your loans, your investors? Or how are you going to actually finance and make this happen? And what are you bringing to the table? Next, I want you to get trained up. I want you to really start to think about what are the sellers looking for, because some sellers actually they are going to require the buyer to have some expertise. So what are sellers and what are investors looking for if you're going to co-invest? Start having some questions, and it's no different than a home inspection. The same goes for a business. You really want to think about how and where you are thinking geography wise, sector wise, what size of the business. Do you want 10 employees, 50 employees, 100 employees? Really think about that and look to your reference library to find where are some other ways that you can find some open access playbooks on how to go about buying a small business. Step 3, go find the money. So definitely if you have a bank that you've gotten your mortgage through, they're probably the first place that you should go to, because they already know you and you have a good track record with them. So they're far more likely to give you more money because you've already managed the money that they've given you well. But there's also SBA 7A loans. You will need 10 to 15% down, and these are really great for deals that are under $5 million. There's also seller financing. The seller is going to let you finance part of it through traditional financing, or they might let you pay the whole purchase price over time, or a portion of the purchase price over time. That's say that 5 times. But there's also some angel investor networks or impact investors that are also looking to partner on putting these deals together. Look at your local co-op. I'm a part of an investment co-op. And one of the things that we're thinking about is co-investing with some other people to purchase a business as opposed to purchasing a property, which was our original intent. But here's a build an impersonal investment memo like you're pitching on Shark Tank. My business partner and I, we literally just went through this process. We created an investment memo, what kind of business we're looking for, the size, the scope, the scale. What does it look like? What do we have to bring to the business as individuals, and what we bring together collectively? We know each other. We've worked together in the past. We've had a 10-year relationship. These are all strengths that we bring, but we also know what our blind spots are. And so we've all documented that into a memo. But once again, you can go start to look for some of these businesses on BizBuySell or Axial, Axial. They are like the Zillow for small businesses, right? But don't sleep on small towns and rural areas, right? There's some great businesses, profitable like HVAC businesses, cleaning businesses, or light manufacturing businesses that won't have a lot of competition. Once again, personal relationship is the best way to go, or going there and talking with them multiple times. There's a restaurant that I used to go to on the way to going to our cabin, and I kind of wish that I had built a relationship with them, because now the restaurant's gone. I've been going there 10 years. Every time we go up to the cabin and every time when we come back. And now I'm so sad because it was a really 50s themed diner that I just absolutely loved. And now it's gone. And I really wish somebody had approached that business about buying it. I'm not good for the restaurant business, but as somebody else said, I'd still be able to go to that restaurant. They were a cultural icon within the community. So the pitfalls, just want to be mindful of what are the hidden debt, the legal baggage, and where are the owners taking a lot of equity out. This will show up on the taxes. So that's why you really want to make sure you get some of these documents either after signing the confidentiality agreement, but some of that is pro forma is built into the deck that the business may have already created if they are working with a seller brokerage firm. So here's some of my final thoughts. You don't have to be start in a business from the ground up. Acquisition is an excellent way to go for you to be able to start your entrepreneurship journey or grow your entrepreneurship journey in building your personal portfolio of wealth. That's it for this episode of the Do Different Better Show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave me a comment, DM me. I'm going to be happy to send you some resources. And I can't wait for some upcoming guests like Janine Firpo from Invest for Better. We're going to have some more great shows. So come back and subscribe. We'd love to see you here. Come back next week when I show you how to do different better.